You're watching another True Villain commentary.
Alright everybody, it's True Villain, welcome back. And today I want to talk about the X9 spear gun in BO7. Because this is one of those attachments where a lot of people look at it for 5 seconds and immediately go one of two ways. Either they say, yo, this thing is busted, or they say, what is even the point of this? And honestly, the real answer is somewhere in the middle. Because the point of this attachment is not to make the X9 Maverick your new normal all-purpose rifle. The point of it is to completely change what the gun is supposed to do. Normally, the X9 Maverick is a 3-round burst AR with strong damage and recoil control, but it also has average mobility and slower handling. Then the Javelin Assembly takes that weapon and turns it into something totally different, a spear launcher that fires a lethal projectile, capable of piercing and impaling enemies. That alone tells you the attachment is supposed to be a niche, high-impact option, not your regular bread-and-butter class. And that is the first thing people need to understand before asking whether it's worth it. You are not just adding a little bonus to the gun, you are making a major trade. You are basically saying, I'm willing to give up the normal X9 Maverick identity to get a weapon that can do something way more extreme in the right moment. That's why this conversation has to be about pros, cons, and trade-offs. Because if you only talk about the one-shot potential, you're not being real about what you're giving up to run it. So let's start with the attachment pros, because these are real. The biggest pro is obvious. Instant kill potential. The whole value of the Javelin Assembly starts there. Instead of asking you to win a standard burst rifle gunfight, this thing gives you the ability to erase somebody with one clean spear shot. That means in the right hands, it becomes a lane control weapon, a corner punish weapon, a flank tool, and a you challenged the wrong angle and now you're dead kind of attachment. That is a real strength. A normal AR cannot do that. The second big pro is the piercing and impale effect. This matters a lot, because Activision did not just call it a lethal spear. They specifically said it can pierce and impale enemies. So if two people line up in a choke point, if players are stacked on an objective, or if somebody is hiding behind another player thinking they're safe, the weapon has way more upside than a regular rifle. That makes it especially useful on tighter maps, narrow routes, objective lanes, doorways, stair entries, and all those places where people naturally bunch up without realizing it. The third pro is uniqueness. And I know that sounds small, but it really matters in a game like BO7. A lot of attachments are just stat nudges. A little more recoil help, a little more range, a little more ADS, whatever. This attachment is not that. It gives the weapon an entirely different identity. It changes how you approach a fight. It changes what kind of positions you want to hold. It changes what situations you're trying to force. That alone gives it value, because it is actually memorable and actually distinct, instead of just being another boring attachment nobody thinks about 2 days later. Now let's get to the attachment cons, because this is where people either stay honest or start lying to themselves. The first con is the most important one. By equipping this thing, you are no longer really using the base X9 Maverick the way it was designed. The X9's official strengths are its burst fire damage and recoil control. That means the minute you convert it into a spear launcher, you are stepping away from the rifle's normal consistency, follow-up potential, and standard AR reliability. So even if the spear shot is nasty, the cost is that you're giving up the main reason people would normally use the X9 in the first place. That's a huge trade-off. The second con is that the Javelin Assembly occupies your barrel slot. That matters because barrel attachments are usually one of the cleanest ways to tune a rifle's range, velocity, recoil behavior, or overall shooting profile. So even if Activision hasn't published a detailed stat sheet for the attachment, one obvious trade-off is that you are using one of your most valuable attachment slots on a specialty conversion, instead of using that slot to make the base rifle stronger in a more normal, consistent way. That is not a small sacrifice. That is one of the biggest hidden costs of running this thing. The third con is the one that shows up in actual gameplay: forgiveness. And this is where I want to be clear. Activision's official description tells us what the attachment does, but not all the exact penalty numbers. So this next part is based on how a one-shot spear conversion naturally plays, rather than a published stat breakdown. A weapon like this is inherently less forgiving. If you miss, you probably do not get the kind of easy recovery you'd get with a normal AR. If the fight becomes messy, if two people push you at once, if somebody baits your first shot, or if you get forced into back-to-back engagements, this is where the weapon becomes a lot harder to justify. That is the price of running something built around one massive first-hit payoff. And that leads directly into the actual trade-offs. Because the real trade-off with the X9 spear gun is power versus consistency. That's really what this comes down to. You are trading the normal, more stable, more repeatable identity of a burst AR for a weapon that can create way bigger moments, but only in specific situations. You are trading sustained pressure for first-shot lethality. You are trading normal versatility for lane control and surprise value. You are trading a more standard attachment setup for a much more specialized role. If you understand that trade-off, the attachment makes a lot more sense. If you ignore that trade-off, then yeah, you're going to either overrate it or underrate it. That is why I do not think this is some new best class in the game situation. I think it is strong in a very specific way. If you are holding an angle, predicting routes, anchoring a lane, locking down a tight push, or setting up for those moments where players naturally bunch together, the X9 spear gun can absolutely cook people. In those situations, the attachment's pros are obvious. But the second the game becomes more fluid, more chaotic, more aggressive, more close range, or more multi-target than your first shot can handle, the cons start showing immediately. And that's why most players are probably not going to want this as a full-time main class. So who is it actually for? I think this attachment makes the most sense for players who like holding smart angles, playing weird offlines, punishing bad spacing, and using specialist-style weapons that break the rhythm of normal fights. If that sounds like you, then the trade-off is worth exploring. But if you're the kind of player who wants to move constantly, re-challenge non-stop, chain gunfights together, and rely on your rifle to stay reliable in every situation, then the trade-offs are probably too harsh for this to become your everyday setup. And that's really the key to whether it's worth it or not. If we're talking about worth unlocking, then yes, absolutely. It is a weekly challenge reward. It is genuinely unique, and it changes the X9 in a way that actually matters. I would much rather BO7 give us attachments like this than filler unlocks nobody remembers. It is 100% worth having in your armory. If we're talking about worth using regularly, that answer is more specific. It is worth using if you want a situational power weapon. It is worth using if you want something fun, nasty, and different. It is worth using if you understand that the attachment's job is to create big first-shot moments, not to carry every kind of gunfight. But if you want the safest, most reliable, most repeatable AR setup across every map and every pace of lobby, then no, the trade-offs probably are not worth it. In that case, you are better off just building the X9 Maverick like a normal rifle and taking advantage of the things the base weapon already does well. So if I had to sum it up as simply as possible, the pros are lethal one-shot potential, piercing value, surprise factor, and uniqueness. The cons are losing the base rifle's normal consistency, giving up your barrel slot, and becoming a much less forgiving weapon if the first shot doesn't solve the problem. And the trade-off is basically this. You're sacrificing steady AR reliability for a weapon that can absolutely dominate the right moment, but not every moment. If you've used the X9 spear gun already, let me know whether you think the trade-offs are fair or if you'd rather just keep the X9 as a normal burst rifle. And if you're new around here, subscribe. See you guys in the next video.